morning. My name is Arnold. I'll be performing Arnold Rothstein, the CEO of the Underworld. Now, before I begin, I would like to inform everyone that my project here today is not to portray Arnold Rothstein as a hero of any sorts. It is simply to show that he was a turning point in organized crime as well as American history. I'd also like to point out that my prop right here, as you can see, has several names on it. To clear up any confusion, this prop is used to indicate when I'll be reciting a quote. It's not used to indicate there. Everyone was at my funeral. I mean, I was a big deal. My acquaintances were there. So was Carolyn and my father. I was a Jewish mobster back in the early 20th century. And no, it's unbelievable, but hear me out. You see, organized crime has been around since the colonial days. And by the mid-1800s, many immigrants had worked their way into American society, as well as worked their way into crime. Soon, Italian and Jews became part of the mix. Organized and stay alive avoid harassment by the nativists. As you can tell, I came from a deeply Jewish background. But as I reinvented my identity, I basically invented the concept of organized crime, representing the ultimate turning point in criminal activities. I took it from small-time thugs and turned it into an actual multi-million-dollar conglomerate. I created the archetype for crime rackets, and I gave crime its sophistication. I tutored future mobsters, as well as helped bridge the cultural gap between Italian and Jews. My grandparents, they escaped from the pogroms in Russian Lubessa, Arabia in the early 1850s. And they came to America, where in 1856 my father, Abraham, was born in the Lower East Side of New York. Now, my father was different from typical immigrants. Usually immigrants would abandon their traditions in order to assimilate into America. But not my father. He stuck to the traditional Orthodox Jewish practices. I mean, he became successful. He owned a cotton processing plant, moved to the Upper East Side with my mother, Esther. I was born in 1882. But I didn't want to grow up Jewish. I told my father, this is America, not Jerusalem. I'm an American. And I drew further away from my family. And at 15, I became attracted to gambling. At 19, I became a professional gambler. I once told a reporter, I always gambled. I can't remember when I did it. Maybe I gambled to show my father he couldn't tell me what to do, but I don't think so. I gambled because I loved the excitement. In 1908, I met the love of my life, Carolyn Green. Sure, she was a shiksa, but I didn't care. We planned to get married, but I made the mistake to show her to my father. My father turned to Carolyn. Are you Jewish, Miss Green? I'm a Catholic. Will you convert if you're married? No. My father then said, if he marries outside of his faith, he will be lost to me. And I married Carolyn. And my father resided the mourner's cottage because now I was dead to him. I shed the final shackles of tradition. A turning point in my own life to reinvent my identity. 1909. I leased an apartment where I lived, but it also served as a gambling house. And Big King Sullivan, the Irish political boss of the Lower East Side, and massive influence on family hall, gave me protection. Now, he knew me since he saw me as a teen gambler. And he taught me to not care about race or religion in conducting a business. Money was money, and whether you're an Irish or a Jew was no big deal. And in the 19-teens, so many cops and politicians were crooked. I mean, Charles Francis Murphy, head of the family, put me in charge of the man between the politicians and the underworld. I mean, think about it. Politicians would actually come to me for money and bribes, and in turn, they would provide protection for me and my associates. But I didn't have total immunity. And I'll tell you, those progressives were on a rampage in Manhattan trying to stop gambling, and it wasn't safe to operate a regular gambling house. Therefore, I invented the floating game, where a game would never be held twice in the same location. But I eventually shut them down and opened casinos in Long Island and Saratoga. And I was a turning point in the casino gaming industry because I turned it into a social service club with a cabaret, nightclub, and restaurant. But I was also the finance of the Underworld. Now, I invented the idea of channeling criminal profits through a vast array of businesses with promise. It was a turning point because I introduced venture capitalism into crime. And I was accused of fixing and financing the Black Sox scandal, where the Chicago White Sox were suspected of intentionally losing the 1919 World Series for money. I was acquitted, yet people still believed I was guilty, and I'll tell you, that was annoying. Speaking of annoying, do you remember in January of 1919, when those schmucks in Congress ratified the 18th Amendment? I mean, give me a break. The noble experiment? Just because a few activists, like the Women's Christian Temperance Union, they decided to enact prohibition, banning the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol. Well, that's when Waxy Gordon and Max Greenberg came to me with the idea of shipping cheap Canadian whiskey. Yet I was a turning point because instead of shipping whiskey from greedy Canadian middlemen, I purchased the finest scotch from Great Britain. And I created a system of shipping foreign booze in cargo ships, stopping before entering harbor, and have speedboats take the booze to trucks, ship them off, with costs paid off all along the way. And in 1925, I got into dope trafficking, shipping heroin, opium, etc. I saw an opportunity to put onto an international basis, regulating supply and demand. Prohibition encouraged lawlessness. People were searching for alternatives to booze. A reporter once said, Rothstein was a financial clearinghouse for foreign dope traffic. He was the only man in the United States who did establish a credit standing with foreign interests in sending drugs into this country. And I developed a great new source of illicit revenue and took a disorganized, risky operation and turned it into a business-like machine. But after all my hard work, I still ended up getting butt kissed. I mean, who would have thought that I, the man who has never been convicted of a crime, died due to a gambling debt? Gambler Mick Menace, the Meshuggah, shot me in front of the Park Central Hotel. I died November 5th, 1928, Polyclinic Hospital. Our lucky Luciano called to order this meeting of the National Crime Syndicate. Today is November 5th, 1958, 30 years after Rothstein was shot, and I still think that trial was bull. How McManus was acquitted? And no, I won't settle down, Lansky. Rothstein helped all of us. He helped Black people Chalker, Frank Costello, Bugsy Siegel, you, Meyer Lansky, and me, Lucky Luciano. He was our teacher. He provided a stepladder for our entire generation. I mean, think of all the turning points Rothstein represents for us mobsters. We learned to be sophisticated. I once told a reporter, he taught me how to dress, how not to wear loud things, but to have good taste. If Arnold had lived longer, he could have made me pretty elegant. Now look at us. We took his teachings and they were our obsessions. And don't roll your eyes at me, Costello. Rothstein's teachings led to the National Crime Syndicate, which was the largest organization of mobsters working together in different rackets. And he also helped bring us Italians and Jews to work together in organized crime. Well, before we used to consistently fight with each other. Lance, you and Bugsy Siegel learned the casino industry and brought it to Florida, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and even Havana. I took over the dope empire, and organized crime was the most successful business in the nation. We made more money than anyone when the market crashed in 1929. And Costello, I know people think of you as the capo di tutti capi. They think of me as a follower of organized crime, but we owe it to Rothstein. He represents a turning point because he applied the business model to organized crime. I mean, don't you remember when we used to be small-time thugs, committing petty larceny and lived off what we could? Rothstein turned it into a corporate-style, financially independent business with multiple rackets. We mobsters learned venture capitalism, casinos, rum running. We learned to be sophisticated, but most importantly, Rothstein organized crime into a business conglomerate. Without him, organized crime would have not reached the relative success that it did, or even exist at all. And although Rothstein drifted away from his family's religion, it never left him completely. When his father went broke, when the con market collapsed, Rothstein donated $300,000 to his father secretly, practicing the Jewish belief of giving anonymously. Rothstein still looked after his father long after his father stopped looking after him. And at his funeral, his father recited the mourner's college for his dead son a second time. Rothstein's teachings led to Bugsy Siegel building Las Vegas, and Meyer Lansky going to Havana, befriended Fulgencio Batista, which helped lead to the Cuban Revolution, a turning point in human history. Rothstein has represented multiple turning points in our lives, even though many do not know it. So, here's the Rothstein. L'chaim.